The following is a presentation of the Black Hollywood Live Network, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is Black Hollywood Live, Breaking Into. Featuring in-depth interviews with today's most influential entertainment figures, highlighting their tips, tricks, and techniques on breaking into the entertainment industry.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host of Black Hollywood Live, Breaking Into.
Hello, welcome to Black Hollywood Live. Happy Friday. I'm your host, Jessica King, and today we are joined by a very special guest. Please welcome Hollywood's top event planner, CEO and creative director of AOO Events, David Merrell.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here.
We're glad to have you. Well, let's jump right in. You started your career initially in insurance, correct?
Yeah, I was recruited out of college by an insurance company, and largely because I had an accounting degree.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was not where I am now, but...
Well, was event planning always on your radar? Like, how did you make that transition into event planning?
I didn't even know what event planning was. I mean, I grew up in Ohio, went to school in Ohio, and so I graduated with an accounting degree, and I moved out here with the insurance company. Okay. It was through friends I started to find out that there was an industry, and this was back in the late 80s, where the industry was still somewhat in its infancy, and discovered that there was an industry that I didn't even know about, and somehow found my way to it, and befriended a guy who owned a company similar to the one I started, and he posed the question, would you like to be in special events? And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. Didn't really know much about it, but I thought it would be fun. And I was kind of weaving my way through industries, I knew I wanted to be in business, and I wanted to be in business for myself. I just didn't know what. Right. But it was within the first month and a half that I was, I landed somehow this big job. At that time, it was like a $40,000 job. I was like, oh my God, they spend this much money on parties, and it was a flawless party, and I knew instantly that I loved the industry, and then I just carved a path, and I just like, okay, I'm going to be on my own with this industry, and I just started to learn everything. And you know, at that time they didn't have schooling for what we did for the hospitality management industry, so just kind of learned it as I went along.
Well, that said, you know, without the schooling, at that time you said they didn't have the schooling, but also considering that you didn't have any previous background in it, was it a lot harder to break into that business?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's, you start a business, it's hard to get into it, whatever the business is. Right. And really, I started as a caterer. So I broke in somewhat of an easy way. And I was always good about making money in the margins. I never knew anything about food. I just knew that, okay, this is a good business. And so I learned how to buy food, and just kind of trial and error grew up in this business for about a year and a half until I was big enough that I could partner with a chef, a brilliant chef, and then really took off from there. And that's when I, you know, by the top of my catering career, which was mid-90s, I was in, you know, a lot of celebrity homes doing their own private catering, some of which I still work in their homes to this day, and we're not allowed to talk about who they are because they still are very comfortable with us being there to handle their events. But I just don't handle the food anymore. I hire in the food. So, well,
for an aspiring event planner, is it recommended that they get a ton of experience, whether it be internships and schooling and things like that, or can they just work their butt off and learn as they go?
You can work your butt off and learn as you go, and it'll probably take you a little longer. I believe in internships completely because it's a way for you to get to know the industry, and there's so many different aspects of every industry, especially this one, that you kind of want to know what you like and what you don't like, and you want to know who you like working with and who you don't like working with. And in an internship, the people that you're interning with can discover whether they like you. We've actually hired in a couple of interns who started with us as interns, loved them so much, and there was such a synergy that now they're full-time employees.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of ways to get in, but you have to realize you're going to have to work from the ground up in this business, and it's not an easy business. It's actually, you know, it is it's a lifestyle. It's not a career. It's not a 9-to-5 thing. You work long hours. And now, being in the side of it where we are now is live event production and decor, it's a stressful job. In fact, I just read it was on Forbes top 10 list as number 5 most stressful jobs.
Really?
And before it was enlisted military personnel. I have a list, actually. Enlisted military personnel, military generals, firefighters, airline pilots, and then event coordinator planners.
Wow.
Is number 5. Police were actually less stressful a job than our job. So it's, you got to know when you're going into this, it's a lifestyle, but if you find that you like it, it's in your blood forever. You really don't leave it.
Well, it's great to hear because a lot of people, from the outside looking in, just see the glitz and glamour, and they're like, "What's so hard about it? You're planning parties and being paid to party or something." So it's good to hear.
Yeah, every day I pinch myself because I wake up and there's a new challenge, a new job, and everything's always different. So that makes it an amazing career. But don't kid yourself, this is not easy work.
Right.
I mean, we do live theater. Basically, it's one take. It's not like you get take after take after take. You've got thousands of people sitting in there, and anything go wrong from whatever's on stage to whatever's out in the audience, and you've got to have backup plans, and got to be able to think on your feet.
Yeah. Well, when you're pitched an event to decorate and plan and whatnot, you're given basically a blank slate. You have an empty space and a budget and some sort of idea. Kind of walk us through how you make this initial vision and turn it into a fabulous final product.
Okay, well, process is somewhat the same for me every time, but it involves asking a ton of questions, because really, whether it's a corporate event or a Hollywood event or a social event like a wedding or a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah or 50th birthday party, the process is still the same. There's a message that has to be delivered. There is a brand, whether it's a bride and groom who are telling their story for the first time, or a movie premiere that's coming out that needs to have a certain personality throughout the whole thing, or a corporate message that needs to be delayed. So you have to really dig into what's the reason for it, who's attending. So it's a lot of information gathering. And then really I will literally sit in the room. I ask, actually, after the meeting, I ask to stay in the room after everyone, and I will sit there and kind of feel the room and start to come up with, every one of the jobs is different. Sometimes you design with lighting, sometimes you design with live show elements, sometimes you design with flowers. It depends on the reason for the event, the location you're going to, the demographic of the people that are attending, and so you just have to dig and dig and dig. And then the process is really sitting down with my staff. I've got an amazing staff where we all bring a different perspectives to the table. And so they, between all these collective ideas, we go back and I take all the ideas and I sit down and start to move them together, and then it's just a collective process in creating these things. Awesome. Does it always turn out exactly how you visualized it, or do you have to make some tweaks along the way? Well, I think you always have to make tweaks, because when you're dealing with something that's live, you're going to have to think on your feet. And I do a lot that's not within the local area. I'm traveling across the country or out of the country. So you have to be prepared for things you would never think you would have to be prepared of. I've got war stories that you wouldn't believe. Bet. But it's a different process almost every single time. And you just have to really be able to think on your feet and be ready for anything. Do you ever encounter clients who are a little difficult to work with, or may not always agree with what you're doing? Oh yeah, the one thing in this industry, and I believe this is true even in the Hollywood industry and the special events industry, is you got to put your ego to the side, right? Because there's going to be someone that's going to feel they're better than you, or step on your toes, and so you've got to just go. This is not about me. This is about delivering something that's right for that client at the right time. Right. Yeah. Now, when you're putting events together, part of your style is to go against the trend and the tradition when you're entertaining. Why is this important for you? I think it just is part of my personality. You know, the funny thing is I actually speak across the country on the trends for the year, and then I completely go the opposite way every single year, and I don't know why. You know, trends are just trends. It allows you to keep a pulse on what's hot and happening right now, but it's really your personal stamp that's going to make the difference between you being something special or not within the industry. Speaking
of your personal stamp, what are some of your personal touches that you like to throw in there to have your personal signature?
I love to design with lighting. So I will spend a way more time with the lighting guys working on the way the room's going to look than anything else. And I have a floral shop and I have a woodworking metal shop, so we build our own sets, but I still pay attention to lighting more than anything else. So I think that lighting is definitely one of my signatures. I also, because of my background in catering and crowd flow, that I'm really good in logistics, so the flows of my parties are very different than everyone else's. So and then design-wise, I love statement pieces, like giant, oversized pieces. Like we have these massive lamps that are like 12 foot tall. And I designed them because being an Ohio boy moving to California, I always liked being able to live indoor, outdoor. You know, my house has these big doors that open up and my furniture's outside and inside, and you don't have bugs, and it's nice and warm at night. So I love to design things that are meant to be indoors but now are outdoors. Right.
Well, you're obviously, you know what you're doing because you've won numerous awards, including Best Events, Best Decor, just to name a few. If I named the whole list, we'd be here for a while. Also, your clientele includes high-profile companies like the Academy of Arts and Wolfgang Puck. How did you gain such an A-list clientele?
You know, you can be introduced into the industry, and few people are, or you just have to simply rely on hard work. And number one, I will say that if you don't have a good product, that you won't last very long in the industry. But more important than that, if you don't have a nice demeanor, if you're not someone that someone likes to work with, that you won't last either. You can be an amazing artist, but if no one likes to work with you, you're not going to be around for very long. But really, it was milestones within my career that made me realize I was moving up. Like the first job that really kind of set me apart was I did the opening of the Reagan Library, which was a huge deal, and I didn't even know how I got it, but I realized that it was a pretty big deal. I mean, 5 presidents there. And then you find these clues along the way that just kind of go, you know what, you're actually doing it. I did an event for Berry Gordy. Oh, wow. It was in honor of Berry Gordy, and it was 50th anniversary of Motown. So we were doing a Motown review show for Berry Gordy, and I was working with Suzanne DePass, who is his producer on many of the jobs. Nerve-wracking as heck. And I was working with Thelma Houston and Louis Price, who's the lead singer of the Temptations. Oh, cool. Debbie Allen. Oh, yeah. Smokey Robinson. Wow. And I was like, you know, I was thinking this is pretty cool, but the real moment when I was like, holy crap, that this is something that I never thought I would be doing is, as executive producer, I like to talk to the celebrities that come in to kind of let them know before they even come on the set, to just give an expectation of what's happening. And Sidney Poitier was giving the award to Berry Gordy, and he said, when we were on the phone, he says, can I read you my speech, my presentation to him? I'd just like to get your opinion on it. And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, and he read that whole thing to me, and I'll tell you, I did not hear a single word, because all I was thinking the whole time is, you're Sidney Poitier. Yeah. You don't need me to tell you anything. Oh my God. But it was one of those pinch me moments, and those kind of pinch me moments make you realize, okay, I've got something here. Yeah. And it's a matter of leveraging that. You know, it's leveraging the relationships, making sure that the entire experience was good enough that they're referring you, and getting amazing pictures. And those leverage moments is what kind of stepped me up the ladder. I mean, I'm 25 years in the business. It took me 25 years to become an overnight success. Wow. So, wow, yeah.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah.
So you were able to use some of your own personal gallery, and you created an online magazine.
Yeah.
Design Dogs.
Design Dogs.
Tell us a little bit about Design Dogs and how you came up with the idea to use your own personal photos.
Well, I'm also a photographer, so I've actually shot my events from from the beginning. So I have 20 years of pictures of everything I've ever done. And so I had a huge library of content. And in 2005, my director of marketing came to me and said, we should do a blog. I'm like, yeah, let's do a blog. I'm like, what the heck is a blog? We had no idea what a blog was at that time. And so we started a blog and had tons of content. And because I'm a speaker in the industry, I always show my stuff as a teaching moment. Here's what I was thinking there, and this is a way of using this. And so I was utilizing the pictures in the blog, and I didn't realize that it gained traction. I was speaking in Melbourne, Australia, and before I went on stage, I was talking with some other event professionals, and they're like, hey, have you heard of this great new resource, Design Dogs? And I realized that they had no idea I was the author, and I realized at that time that it actually had legs that were more beyond national borders. So I realized I had something, and in the last year and a half, we decided to change it from my blog to a magazine. And it's turned out amazing. I mean, we've got really great traction now. We've got advertisers coming on. I'm not even allowed to I'm not even allowed to do content except maybe once a month anymore, because it's no longer about me. It's about really, the magazine's about creating a voice for the design special events industry. And I'm real excited about where it's going.
Right. Very cool. Very cool.
Thanks.
How important do you think it is for your career to incorporate other mediums like this?
Like Design Dogs?
Yeah, like, you're an event planner, but now you've gone into the blogging world. And
well, it's not even a blogging world. I'm now a publisher.
Right.
Which is a whole other world. Yeah, I actually have more than one job now. It was important for my career because we are looking at, I think we learned a lot of lessons from the last economic downturn in 2009, where I was really heavy corporate and a little bit of social. And 2009, everyone stopped and corporate wasn't buying anything, so I was going to wear my revenue stream. So I decided I was never going to allow that to happen again. And for me, it was about diversity, and so making sure that there was diverse products. What I found from Design Dogs now is it's creating a whole other platform for me. There's a section within Design Dogs that's called Dog Treats, and it's about brand new products coming out of the market that you can use in your events. So what I'm finding is that I'm finding out about new products before everyone else is. So yeah, I love that.
Well, I mean, you've done events as luxurious as $500,000. And you've done some lower than that for $80,000. How do you go about ensuring that each event has the same caliber despite the budget, regardless of what the budget is?
The larger the event, the easier it gets, because you have more and more people around you, and you can bring in professionals that you really know that they've got your back in certain areas. So they're always easier. But the amount of detail is always the same.
Right.
I think the thing you have to keep in mind, the larger the event goes, is that the little details still mean a lot, that the attendees still will pay attention to what's placed in front of them and whether you have personalized something around them. So that's one of the keys, I think, of the whole thing, is that you've got to make it still personally meaningful to every single attendee and not just...
Yeah. How do you attack a situation when someone wants more than what their budget can offer?
Which is pretty much every time.
Right. I'm sure it happens all the time.
They want a Cadillac on a small budget.
Champagne on a beer budget.
Yep. It's what we realize is that I don't think anyone really realizes what things cost in this industry, and it's not as inexpensive unless you're a DIY type of person.
Right.
It's expensive to do to throw events. So once they give you the list and they give you the budget, really your job is to kind of teach them, be a parent, and kind of say, this is where I think that you'd make the biggest bang for the buck, and you just kind of steer them along the way. And you also have to be a teacher. You have to explain, this is why it costs as much as it is, because a lot of times they don't get it, especially when you get into live shows. They don't realize the amount of detail and all the stuff happening behind the scenes that there is, and there takes a lot to create even a production just like this.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you continue to keep things fresh and new for each event in order to stay above your competition.
Yeah, that's tough, especially when you are a businessman and the creative director. It's really tough to turn off the the business mind sometimes.
Right.
I'm dealing with lawyers and accountants and employees and their feelings and all these things that really are occupying your time. And then you got to switch over to creative. So I've learned a few tricks to actually switch the mind real quickly and to go back into creative mode and clear the mind so you can be creative. But I believe it's things like continuing to go to conventions, to pay attention to what's on TV constantly, look at the catalogs in the magazine. They're on pulse as to exactly what's on trend now. Pay attention to what's happening in fashion, Fashion Week in New York. These are all clues as on where things are going. And you can't think that you know it all. If you do, you will become irrelevant in this industry.
Right.
You have to stay on top of what's changing, what's trending.
Always learning.
Always learning. Always learning.
Are you ever able to attend an event as David the guest and not David the event planner?
Yes, I have been doing a lot of those lately, and everyone asks if I critique the events, and I never do, because you never know you can't say one event's better than the other because you don't know what their budget was. You don't know how much time they had to think about it. So, but I am trying to learn to be a gracious host and just enjoy and not worry about like trying to pick up a plate or move a chair or something like that. I try to enjoy.
Oh, I gotta say that's the hardest part, because
it is.
When I was planning my wedding, I could not enjoy any weddings without being like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Like I was
and you don't know where to land.
Right.
Yeah, that's part of the teacher and the parent thing. That's part of, there's so many things you like. Our job is to actually narrow your focus down to the things that are most important.
Right.
And it is tough because there's tons of stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of budget, you've worked with huge events, large corporate events, and you've also done small, intimate events.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences between creating those different types of events? Say, like, if you were doing People's Choice Award, like an award show, versus a corporate holiday party or something like that. What are some of the biggest differences with those?
There's always going to be a VIP at the event. There's always going to be a celebrity. Even in corporate events, the CEOs, the top executives are the celebrities that have to be handled a certain way. That's true whether it's a Hollywood gala or a corporate event or even a social event. So I believe that that you just have to identify the most important people and make sure you give them a little extra attention, and then just simply know your audience and know who it is you're playing to.
And you rarely contract your events out to third parties, is that correct?
Not the design ever. There's times when I have to do events on the East Coast and the budget doesn't allow me to pack a semi and take it out that way. So it's my job to learn the vendors that are in the area and the best resources and utilize them the best way. So there's many times when I am simply just the puppeteer with the strings.
Right.
But I'm never not involved in the design, and we're always have our leads there to make sure that every aspect of it, whether it's catering or the show production or the design and the decor, that there's always one of our leads overseeing that group. Would
you say that helps your team overall to be more efficient?
Well, it's certainly easier managing than doing it yourself. I think what it does is it makes them more well-rounded as producers, because they get to see how other companies work and because it's very different. The way we do things in California is completely different than they do them on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
And the way they do things in DC is very different than New York. So, there's a huge learning curve that comes with every single job we do out of state.
Right.
And I think that's valuable to any producers to try to do that.
Well, your formula for success is purpose, personality, and perspective. Why are these your most important factors?
Well, purpose, number one, you've got to be clear on where you want to go. And even if there was a clarity and now there needs to be a shift, because I believe that you should always, in perspective, you should be looking at what do you have now, what is the new situation in front of you, and I'm jumping ahead to perspective before finishing purpose, but you have to be clear on the purpose.
Right.
Personality, I talked about at the beginning. If you're not a likable person, it doesn't matter how talented you are, if you're not someone that someone likes to work with, you're not going to last long. And that's true of any industry. definitely in Hollywood, it's
Right.
true.
Oh,
We
yeah.
know that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then perspective is, you know, taking a constant look at yourself and going, you know what, the buyers have changed. When 2009 happened and now the economy is kicking back in, buying's different now. For the way people look at us is different. And my skill set has changed. So it's about looking at what you're offering now, looking at how the clients are buying, and it doesn't matter whether it's Hollywood or Simple Bride and Groom or corporate. They're all changing, and the way and the world's changing. So you just have to have perspective and know that you've got to go with it, or you'll become a dinosaur.
Awesome. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced personally when it comes to building your own company and making a name for yourself in this industry?
Yeah, well, twofold, the business side and the marketing side. The business side, I was blessed to actually have an accounting degree and then discovered that I had a design flair that I had no idea I had.
Yeah.
So it was really easy for me to do both, because there's a lot of artists who are brilliant at what they do but never make, you heard the term starving artist.
Right.
There's a reason for it, because they don't know how to run a business, they don't know how to make money.
Yeah.
So if you have to be able to understand the business side of this, the profit and losses and making all that. The other side is marketing. And in LA, it's the toughest market in the world, because you know LA, it's the next best thing. What's the coolest, newest thing? It doesn't matter if your product's still good. You've got to constantly reinvent, which I actually think keeps me on my toes, because I rebrand like every 7, 8, 9 years, the entire company and the message, and it's kept me on point.
Do you have any lessons that you had to learn the hard way?
I just said yes, a ton. How much time do we have? Lessons the hard way. I learned to keep my mouth shut when new things are happening within the industry, or happening, or new possibilities for my company, new ventures that are happening. I learned to keep my mouth shut until they happen. And I used to be like, oh my God, this is going to happen before, and a number of them didn't come to fruition, and one of them almost made me lose my business, because clients were actually starting to pull away from me because they thought, okay, he's not going to be around anymore. I learned a very hard lesson that way, to keep the mouth shut and just kind of keep it with your inner circle. And then once it happens, it'll kind of reveal itself.
It's so hard when you're so excited.
It is, and you're so excited.
You want it so bad.
Yeah.
What are some, for an aspiring event planner, what are some of your suggestions? Like, what's the first thing that they need to know before embarking on this journey?
Well, like I said before, this is not a 9-to-5 job. It is a career, and you will work long hours and hard hours, but you will walk away satisfied every single time. It's not an easy road. It's a long, hard road. You have to. In this business, you are only as good as your last job. So I can do amazing work for 10 years and have that one job, and it'll set you way back. So you have to be careful with that. But getting into the business, if you can do the internships, if you can find any way to get into the industry, don't worry about landing the perfect job for you, because you'll never know what the perfect job is until you get into the business and start to work it. But those are the clues that you need. You need to know who you like in the industry, what aspect you really want to be in, and find out where your strengths are. So jump in is my advice. Jump in and learn and be open to every experience that comes your way.
Is there like a number one mistake that you see newcomers make, or people who are just starting off?
Yeah, and it's really about that personality thing. If you come into the industry and think, and you come off like you know it all, you will be dismissed so quickly in this industry. And you have to remember, the other mistake is you have to be kind to everybody. I don't care if it's the guys unloading the trucks. There's a saying, be careful the toes you step on today may be connected to the ass you have to kiss tomorrow.
Wow, yeah, I like that.
there are a lot of people in this industry that had been in the industry for a while now. I can think of two in particular who weren't the nicest to the assistants and all the kind of people. Those assistants and all these people that were loading the trucks are now the decision makers. And they remember that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So if you want longevity, you have to make sure that you keep your integrity and your likability intact.
Be kind and humble.
Be kind and humble all the time.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, you've obviously accomplished so much in your career, and I'm sure there's so much more to come.
I'm not even close to done.
I bet. What would you like to conquer next?
Just said, be careful what you wish for. I've always wanted to do events in China and Russia.
Oh, cool.
And so I've actually got some things potentially happening in China, but all my friends in the industry are like, be careful what you wish for, because it's a whole different avenue over there. You know, I've got a good 10 to 15 years before I think I'm going to start to slow down. And I'm really just excited for what's next. You know, I'm paying a lot of attention right now to technology, because technology is advancing so quickly that it's completely changing our industry. And to me, it's really exciting, the things you can do right now you couldn't do last week.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's take this thing global.
Take it global. It is a global world, and you know, there's a lot we can learn outside the borders of the U.S.
Well, where can we find you on social media so we can track you down for our next big event?
You can kind of see me everywhere. Personally, on Twitter at David Merrell, and on Facebook, David Merrell, Instagram, David Merrell, and then we have Design Dogs for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and what else am I missing? AO Events, or my company, AOO Events for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. You can
find me on Facebook and Twitter at I am Jessica King, and on Instagram at JessClem. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great weekend.
From producers Maria Menounos, Derrial, Christon, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.